Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Thanks for watching Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage Vault Series. The Vault Series is a series of interviews that we shot starting back in 2004, 2 years before the Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum opened to the public. If you like what you see, please be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Thanks for watching. Today's clip is with New York session guitarist David Spinozza. We did this interview before the museum was open, somewhere around 2005 in New York. David, you don't need to know any more than he played on one of John Lennon's albums, he played on one of Paul McCartney's albums, and he played on one of Ringo Starr's albums. I will say that with the information, if you're a Beatles fan, that you're going to get from his behind-the-scenes recording sessions with those three Beatles, and playing on American Pie, Don McLean, do not cut this video off until you see his story of playing on Dr. John's Must Have Been the Right Place, the Wrong Time. I think you'll love it. David Spinozza.
The Beatles thing is a very funny thing for me because I remember my mother waking me up one morning before school. You know, she'd always, she would feeding me coffee at a very early age. I'm still a coffee fanatic. And she said, you got to get up. There's some crazy group coming here from, you got to see this group on the news. I distinctly remember getting up and watching the news and seeing that Beatle haircut. And it wasn't the kind of music I was into whatsoever. I pretty much was into R&B, soul music, and you know, jazz. I would say I was a closet jazzer, but I was playing R&B a lot. And I saw them singing, you know, She Loves You, Yeah, 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 whatever it was. I remember just thinking it was ridiculous. I didn't, like the Beatles for me, I was a late bloomer for the Beatles. I was not a Beatle fan right out of the box. I just looked at it and said, I don't get this stuff, man. You know, I'll go down to the Apollo this weekend and see James Brown. You know, it just didn't speak to me right away. But I do remember that day.
Was there, when you said you were a late bloomer for the Beatles, when did you become a fan, if that's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I started to like their stuff maybe after about the third record or something, fourth record. I wasn't right away. I thought it was, I don't know, bubblegum-ish or something. I thought it was sort of trite. I didn't get it.
Did you ever do anything with John while he was here in town, or any of the Beatles?
I did stuff with the Beatles, yes, but which I thought was interesting because you're talking about the Beatles. I thought I was sort of an unlikely candidate for this because I wasn't a Beatle aficionado in any way. By Abbey Road, I thought they were absolutely geniuses as far as songwriting. As far as musicians, I wasn't listening to them for the musicianship. I thought of the Beatles as a great songwriting, you know, phenomenal songwriting team, and phenomenal records, you know, the way the record sounded. So when Paul McCartney had left the Beatles, now, this is some years later, this is all strange. This is all, I haven't thought about this in years because I sort of became a studio musician really fast. By the time I was 17, I was already doing 10 dates a week. It happened really fast. And I then got a call from Linda McCartney one day saying, hi, I'm Linda McCartney, my husband's trying to put a band together. Would you come and meet us? I was like, wow, I thought it was a joke or something, but it really was Linda. Apparently they called the Musicians Union here in New York and asked someone at the union to name like 5 different guitar players, 5 different bass players, 5 different piano players, 5 different drummers. So, because Paul's going to be doing a solo album, and he didn't want to use, guys from England or whatever, so he was here. So my name got in that mix, and I went up. Long story short, I guess it was an audition. I didn't know it was an audition. I never really had auditioned. People just did word of mouth in the city. No one auditioned. The studio guys didn't really audition for anything. You know, you would just get a call. Someone would say, call Spinozza, or call Hugh McCracken, or call whoever, and you'd get the call. So I went there, and there was Paul and Linda in this like loft. I remember it was really dusty loft and dank. And he asked me if I could play a certain rhythm on the guitar, and he handed me like an acoustic guitar or something. I said, sure, you know. The whole thing was surreal, and I was like, wow, in this room with Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. And I was wondering what I was doing there, really, you know. So then I played this rhythm, and he said, it sounds good. And then he said, do you play anything else? I said, yeah, I play a little piano. I said, go over to the piano, play a little something. I played something on the piano. We didn't jam together. He didn't play bass. He just asked me what I could play. And I said, I played drums. I started on drums. He said, that's great. We played a few more tunes. He said, nice meeting you. I'm sorry that we had to do it like this. But I can't, you know, how am I going to hear all the musicians this quick in New York? I said, fine. So I went home. I said to my wife at the time, Georgina, I said, that was so surreal. I said, I just met Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. I guess they're trying to do a record, and I don't know what they're doing. It was like an audition. And then the phone rang, and my wife says, Linda McCartney's on the phone. this is about 45 minutes after the thing. She answered the phone. She said, my husband would like to hire you for the next 5 weeks to do an album. And I got the call after that was it. And so I wound up working on the Ram album. The first tune that I played on that record was Just Another Day, which was a single. Actually, the single wasn't on the Ram album. The single was something they put out, but then that was at the time of the Ram album. They never included it on the Ram album. But then I did that in the whole Ram album. And the rhythm he had asked me to play, turned out at the Loft, was the rhythm that he wanted on that tune. And I guess he liked the way I played it, so he called me. And then I overdubbed about 6 different guitars. I'm all over that record. I'm doing all the electric guitar fills, plus all the doubling of the acoustics and whatever else is on there.
Did you play on any other records for him or with him?
After the Ram album? No, I actually didn't play anymore after that. We sort of had a falling out. I had a little bit of a fall. Actually, not with him. I had a little falling out with Linda, and it just didn't work out. You know.
Well, that'll kill you kind of quick.
Yeah, things happen, and it was
But you had that whole album though.
Yeah, I'm honored, and also my buddy Hugh McCracken did some of it. It's like myself and Hugh.
What's some of the other records and artists that you've played with, that you've played on sessions for?
I think, some of the early stuff, when I was like 18 or something, the first hit record might have been, and this is interesting because I'm not sure, and I read it in different places. I'm not sure because I used to do a lot of stuff. Holland Dozier Holland used to come to New York and do records, and the rhythm section would be sometimes 4 guitars, 4 bass players, 4 drummers, and we'd all play on everything. And then they'd say, "You lay out, you play," and they weren't putting names on records and a lot of the stuff. So I don't know, but someone told me that I played on Frida Payne's Band of Gold. I can't swear for sure that I did. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not certain. I know I played on a lot of those Holland Dozier Holland productions back then. They were done at the record plant here in New York when the record plant was on 44th Street. I was told that I played on Frida Payne's Band of Gold, which would have been the first #1 record I played on. Now, one I do know that I did play on for sure is Bye Bye Miss American Pie. I am definitely on that.
Yeah?
Yeah, and that was at the record plant, same studio, Don McLean. And there was only 2 studio musicians on that. Don had his own bass player. No, it was 3. Paul Griffin, piano player, he was the piano player on it, passed away recently. And myself, and a drummer named Markowitz. Roy Markowitz was the drummer. And then he had his own bass player.
Some other records that you've played on that you're proud of?
When I was saying about me being an unlikely candidate to work on the Beatles thing, the first one of them that I met was Paul McCartney in that situation. The other one was that John Lennon, some years later, called me to play on Mind Games, which I did. Actually, Yoko Ono called me for something she was doing. I think I played on her record first. I'm always bad with what things happen in what order, but I think it might have been a Yoko Ono record. And then she told John about me, and then John asked me to play, and I wound up being on Mind Games, which has just been re-released again. Now, I was told, once again, because I don't get into this, but somebody went on the website, went on the internet and found out that Paul, I think that it's myself and the organist, Billy Preston, are the only 2 people that played with like all the different Beatles on solo records.
Did you play with Ringo?
I played with Ringo on Ringo the Fourth.
I
wound up later on. I wound up on everybody's record. I met George Harrison at backstage at a concert. We spoke a little bit, but I never played on his record. But I played on all 3 Beatles solo records, and neither of them told anybody about me. They all those phone calls came from completely unrelated sources, which is, when I look back now, it's pretty bizarre. What are the chances of that happening? All the guitar players in New York and whatever. But I wound up on Ringo the Fourth, that album, which Arif Mardin, I believe, produced. And I wound up on Mind Games. I produced a thing for Yoko for a while too, and then I had been playing with them. They were trying to put together another Plastic Ono band. I did that for a minute, and then the Paul McCartney. And this is when Paul and John were not speaking to each other. This is when they were broken up. A couple of years after, and they weren't even talking to each other. So it was kind of bizarre that both of them did solo records. I got called for both records within the period of 5 years, completely unsolicited from each other.
How were they different? How was doing an album for John different than doing an album with Paul?
Well, Paul was a little more meticulous about sounds. Paul was really into like the engineering of records. He's really brilliant about getting drum sounds and different sounds for each song, and he tailored the sound for each song. Once we did a song, he would get a completely different drum sound for the next song, or a completely different bass sound. He was really into the sonics of music. When I worked with John Lennon, he seemed like he wanted it done quick. We went in, he'd show you the song, and he'd like want to do a take, and he'd want to get out of there. And then he probably came back in later and overdubbed guitar parts himself and took time with that and the vocals. But the basic tracks went down really fast with John. He didn't really want to pitter-patter about it. He didn't want to just sit around and keep playing the same song over and over again. Whereas when I did it with Paul, sometimes we would do the same song for 2 days till he really thought the take had some magic, or he might just do it over and over again because of some sound reason he wanted to get it, which was interesting. They were both really different. John was sort of like a speed freak; he just wanted it done, and Paul wanted it meticulous. I could see why they probably didn't get along after a while. They were two really different types of people. I don't even think it's fair to compare, but people ask you that anyway. So.
Well, I think there again. I think that's probably the same thing that may be true in their songwriting as well. You know.
Yeah.
I think that it may have been that what you just said was the magic of the writing deal. Maybe John, it just came to him, like channeled through him.
Yeah.
And Paul may have been a lot more
laborious about it or something.
Right.
Yeah. Well, whatever it was a magic team. I mean, and like I say, as I look back now, I realize more and more the older I get just how great they were. I didn't come aboard being a Beatle fan. I really, I didn't start out being a Beatle fan by any means.
What about Ringo? How was that?
Ringo was great. He was a funny guy. When I met him, he was. In fact, there was even drummer on the session. I mean, there was Steve Gadd was there. It was two drummers. It was Ringo's session, but Steve Gadd was playing drums too. There were two drums, myself, Tony Levin on bass. I forgot who was playing piano now on that record. Jeff Marinoff, also another really good New York studio guitarist. He was on it. Jeff and I were on it. And I definitely got the feeling from Ringo that he was the unheralded Beatle. He was definitely sort of like when we would break down, we'd be playing one of his songs and we would stop. We'd all start jamming and messing around. And he'd sort of get bugged. He didn't like the New York jamming thing that we did. He'd go, "You guys play too many notes. Just keep it simple." And he was funny. And then we would joke with him. He'd say, "It's just like being in the Beatles. Nobody listens to me." And it was hysterical. He was such a cute guy. We had a great time.
And what year was this?
I don't remember. That had to be 78, maybe 79. I don't know. Closer. It was getting there. I don't think it was the 80s yet. Something like that. Yeah.
Was there a single off that album that did good?
Ringo the Fourth? I don't remember one. No, I don't know that it did that well. But it was a pretty interesting thing to have played on all three of their records. For me, I mean, like I said, I remember the day my mother said, "Hey, look at these guys from England," and I looked at them on television, and it seemed like 5 days later I was playing with them somewhere, and they were already broken up as a band.
Right.
It just seemed to go by like fast.
Those are great stories. Is there some more artists here that would be interested?
Let's see what other artists. Also, in terms of like meeting people and playing with people, later on I played on a James Brown record.
That had to be great.
That was great, and that was really interesting because I spent a lot of my childhood taking the train from Mamaroneck, New York, which was like 30 minutes from the city, 25 minutes from 125th Street, and getting on the train to go see James Brown at the Apollo.
Now, did you not feel a little?
Yes. Yeah, I was a little threatened. Like myself and my wife, we were sometimes the only two white people in the whole place, but we wanted to see James Brown, so we would go and we would watch James Brown. Sometimes I would go multiple times. I would go like Friday and then go back Sunday, or stay for two shows.
And you didn't get hassled or anything?
Never. Just take the train home, and we used to go down. And so when I wound up working with him later on in life, and wound up playing at the Apollo, actually, I did a gig at the Apollo with Carla Thomas. And I was about 17, 18, and Rufus came by with James. And I met James, and that was surreal for me. That was like, my God, I'm meeting James Brown. I used to come, like 4 years ago, I was coming here watching this guy.
Right.
Now I'm playing with Carla Thomas.
Right.
And I'm a studio guy. I'm playing on records and everything, and then I wound up playing on a James record. I used to also, a lot of people know Dr. John, who's, Mac Rebenak, was also like a session guy here in New York. He'd come to town, and Arif would hire him, and a lot of times we'd play sessions together. For the longest time, I didn't even know Dr. John was Mac Rebenak, another naivete of mine in those days. And we'd play these sessions together. He would just be a studio piano player, and I'd be the guitar player, and I'd play in these sessions, and we'd back up whoever Atlantic was doing. Sometimes we'd even, some of these records, you only know about the records that became hits. Played on thousands of records that never left the room.
Right.
People just think when you're on the hits, but you have to play on a lot of records before you get on hits. So I'm doing records all the time. Well, one time, I'm in Atlantic, and Dr. John was there, I guess, mixing in some other room at Arif, and I was working with Joel Dorn, I believe, this other producer and he was in the room. So I come walking out of the room. I'm on my way finishing the Joel Dorn's record. I got like 15 minutes. I'm heading to a jingle session because we also did a lot of commercial music too back then. I wasn't just doing records. I was doing a lot of TV commercials, the music for it. So all of a sudden, Dr. John and Mac come out of this room. Dr. John and Arif come out of this room, and I go, "Spinozza, what are you doing? You got a minute? You got to come in here." I said, I'm on my way out. I said, "No, we're mixing my record, and I forgot this 8-bar guitar solo. Just come in here and whack out a little blues solo. For us. I said, man, I got to go. I said, come on quick. And it was in a little room. It was just a mixing room, and there was an amp in the corner. So I plug in this thing. They run the song to the middle of the song, so I never hear the song because I told them I got to go. They just go to the 8-bar section that they want.
Right.
I said, well, play it down once. Let me hear the changes. He asked, you got a chart? He said, no, I don't have a chart. You'll hear it. So as they're playing, I play this little solo. I know it's in a key E flat, and I do this thing. And one note, I sort of overbend the note. And I said, all right, let me tune. Let me try it again. And then they go, no, that's it. It's magic. You're out of here. So I go, you got to be kidding. I said, I didn't even tune up. No. I said, oh, come on. Meanwhile, and they said, oh, you said you got to go. That was magic. Get out. So they throw me out. I'm feeling bad because I feel like I didn't nail it, and I wanted to tune up and do it again. They wouldn't let me do it. Cut to 4 months later. This is a great New York story. I am in a taxi cab. I got 3 guitars, an acoustic here, an electric, and a 12-string of go to session. And this tune comes on the radio. Must have been the right time to think it's wrong place. And I'm hearing that it's Dr. John.
No kidding.
And then and I hear this. I said, wow, it's Dr. John.
That is the Dr. John song.
Yeah, so I'm listening to it. Now the cab driver, you'll love this. The cab driver, it gets to the guitar solo. I've never heard the song, right? He cranks it up. He says, you'll appreciate this. You're being a guitar player. Listen to this. This is my favorite guitar solo. He turns it up. It's me. It's the solo I played in the thing. So I go, just a knee-jerk reaction. I go, holy shit, that's me. He says, yeah, buddy, right. He turns it down. Keeps driving. Is that a New York story or what?
That's the best thing I've heard, man.
True story. I never heard the song. They rolled, I didn't play one other note on that whole record. That's the meters. It's the meters were playing it. And they got to that section, they were mixing it, they forgot to put a guitar solo or sax solo, and they saw me in the hallway leaving a session. They said, would you do it? I only heard it once, played it once, they threw me out of the studio, and that's when I heard it in a taxi cab. The cab driver thought I was full of shit.
And he didn't even believe you.
He went, yeah, right, buddy.
Oh, God,
Turned
that's
it down.
funny.
I didn't even hear the whole solo.
Oh,
Then
that's so
I went out and bought
funny.
the record the next day, so I could hear the whole solo.
That's great.
That's
Did they
just-
pay you?
Oh, yeah.
Is your name on the record?
Yeah, my name's on the record,
Okay,
on the
good.
album. That's the only thing, the whole record, I'm on those 8 bars. And to this day, when I see Dr. John, occasionally I see him. Sometimes I go out with the Blues Brothers band, and I'll see him in Europe or whatever. And they go, there's my hit maker. There's the hit maker, because that was his biggest record.
Yeah.
But we never really worked together. I mean, we played in studios after that, but I was never in his band, and I wasn't a traveling guy. I was a New York guy,